Here in the States, the judge overseeing the federal case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams is delaying a decision on whether to grant the Department of Justice's request to dismiss the case. At a hearing yesterday, the judge questioned the acting Deputy Attorney General, Emil Bovee, who originally ordered the charges be dropped. Bovee said he believes the case would hinder national security and immigration efforts by the Trump administration. Mayor Adams lost his security clearance as a result of last year's federal indictment. The judge also questioned Mayor Adams directly, confirming that he understood the charges against him could be refiled by the DOJ in the future. The judge indicated he would have a final decision soon, saying it's not in anyone's interest here for this to drag on. Let's now bring in former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg. Dave, there's a lot of politics involved here as well, which we can get to in a minute. It's an election year for the New York City mayor's office. But let's start just sticking with the legal proceedings yesterday. What did you make of what the judge had to say, his questions to all involved? And when, your best guess, might we hear a ruling?
Soon, Jonathan. Judge Ho said that he wanted to get moving on this, didn't want to prolong it much longer. It was quite a spectacle yesterday because you had the number 2 person, Emil Bovee, at the Department of Justice, Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, showing up himself to court. That's really unusual. It was the right thing to do, though, because he broke it. He owns it. This is his baby. And in court, he said that there was no quid pro quo. He said that under oath. But then his reason for the dismissal of the charges sure sounded like a quid pro quo. He essentially said, it's not a quid pro quo, Your Honor. We just gave Eric Adams something in exchange for something. I'm not a Latin major.
Okay.
Sure sounds like a quid pro quo, right? In court, he reiterated, right? Yeah, in court, he reiterated what he wrote in that earlier letter ordering the dismissal, where the decision was politically motivated, that they wanted Adams to assist with Trump's immigration crackdown. Of course, the implication is that if Adams didn't support Trump's immigration policies, he would still be facing criminal charges. So first off, that's bad enough. As a prosecutor, you're supposed to uphold the rule of law, not undermine it to support a president's political agenda. But what's worse is that the charges were dropped without prejudice, which means they could be refiled at any moment. So if you think the charges are inappropriate, then drop the charges permanently or issue a pardon for the mayor. But when you dismiss it without prejudice, it makes it means that you're reserving judgment to see if the mayor plays ball. And that's probably why the mayor was so compliant to the border czar when they were on the couch at Fox News the other day, where it seemed like the border czar was pulling the mayor's strings. I mean, that's what happens when you have the sword of Damocles hanging over your head.
Yeah, David Samstein here. I was kind of wondering about that. Is it possible, I don't know the procedureship, is it possible that the DOJ could amend its charge and get rid of that without prejudice element of it and just say, look, we're just going to get rid of it entirely. We don't think there's merit to the case. And therefore, you lose that specter of politics playing a role here. And then the second question is, obviously, it's quite rare for a judge to come in and say, actually, no, we're going to not accept your dismissal of this case. But let's say they do that. How does this go forward? Would the judge then assign a different prosecutor to take up the charges because clearly the DOJ does not want to do this?
It'll be so awkward, but it's the right thing to do. I do think that Judge Ho should reject the dismissal. He's got 3 options. He can allow the dismissal, he could block the dismissal, or he can order an evidentiary hearing to get like Danielle Sassoon, the former interim U.S. attorney, to come in and talk about why she resigned and why she said this was a quid pro quo. I don't think he's going to do the latter because that would prolong things. So I think he will probably reject the dismissal because he knows how bad this looks. And although it's rare for a judge to block the prosecutor's decision to dismiss charges, it can and should happen when a prosecutor's dismissal is based on improper motives like politics. Then such a dismissal would be contrary to the interests of justice. So if Judge Ho decides to block the dismissal, then things will get really interesting because the federal prosecutors will likely sit on their hands in a standoff with the court.
All right, President Trump, just want to get one more topic in here with you, Dave, declared himself a king as he celebrated his administration's bid to end federal approval of New York's congestion pricing. He wrote on Truth Social, congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. I mean, a little bit joking here. Let's not get triggered here. But, I mean, it's exhausting. The congestion pricing program was approved under the Biden administration after years of challenges and implemented last month to raise money for the region's aging mass transit system. In a letter to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy called congestion pricing a slap in the face to working-class Americans and small business owners. Hochul vowed to fight the Trump administration in court, saying New York is not ruled by a king. The MTA also pushed back and announced it would continue to collect the tolls until a federal judge tells it to stop. How do you see this playing out, Dave?
Yeah, it's going to go all the way up, perhaps to the Supreme Court. Ronald Reagan must be rolling around in his grave. I mean, first he sees that Trump takes a side of the Russians. And now the whole concept of local rule. Remember local rule? I'm old enough to remember when they tried to get rid of the Department of Education because they said that it's local rule. The locals should govern education. Well, when it comes to transportation, you're saying that that's coming out of the White House. That's why there's this inherent conflict. And I think it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court because I don't think you're supposed to do this. You're allowed to do this. Local governments are supposed to be able to make decisions on what goes on their roads. And the federal government can't just veto it. And especially, even if he's joking about being a king, you know that that's going to be used against President Trump in court. They're going to say, this guy thinks he's a king and he shouldn't be allowed to do it. I do think it gets to the Supreme Court. And then who knows, because the Supreme Court has been very supportive of a very powerful executive in the White House.
All right. Former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg. Always good to see you. Thank you very much for coming on this morning. So the Senate is pushing ahead with Kash Patel's nomination for FBI director, despite being one of President